looking for a sleepless night filled with spine-chilling tales? Look no further than these hair-raising school lockdown scary stories that will have you clutching your blankets tightly until morning. Let me tell you a spine-chilling story that happened during my middle school days. A story that still haunts me to this day. It all started with a kid named Jeff. He was trouble with a capital T and the bane of my existence. We never got along, and he seemed to have a personal vendetta against me. He was always skipping classes and getting into trouble. One day, a friend told me Jeff had been saying negative things about me. I was furious and decided to confront him. We had a heated argument, and our friends had to break us up. We didn't speak for a few days, and I thought I'd seen the last of him. But then I received a text message from an unknown number. It was Jeff. He wanted to make amends and suggested that we meet up at the South End bathrooms during 5th period. I was hesitant at first, but I thought it would be better to patch things up than have an enemy. As I walked to the bathroom, I heard strange noises over the speakers. A teacher called me over and told me that the school was on lockdown. I was forced to stay inside her classroom for almost 10 minutes until it was lifted. When I finally made it back to my classroom, the principal knocked on the door and asked me to follow her. I was confused and scared. It wasn't until later that I found out what had happened. Jeff had lured me to the bathroom with the intention of harming me. He'd been seen walking towards the bathroom with a weapon, and a student reported it to their teacher, prompting the lockdown. I shudder to think what could have happened if that student hadn't reported it, and I had gone through with the meeting. Jeff was expelled from school, and I never saw him again, but the fear and uncertainty of that day have stayed with me ever since. As a high school student, I had my fair share of boring classes, but nothing was quite as mind-numbing as economics. Our teacher, Mr. Tucker, was a nice guy, but his lectures were drier than the Sahara. He'd hand out endless packets for us to complete, leaving no room for creativity or fun. I often found myself sneaking off to the bathroom for a break from the monotony. One fall day, after enduring a long week, I dragged myself to economics class. 15 minutes into the lesson, I pleaded for a bathroom break. As I strolled down the deserted hallway, I popped in my headphones and queued up my favourite playlist. Instagram and music took my mind off the dullness of economics class, and before I knew it, I'd been in the bathroom for 5 minutes. As I returned to the classroom, I found the door locked. Puzzled, I knocked. Mr. Tucker appeared at the window, signalling for me to come in. To my shock, my classmates were crouched on the floor at the back of the room. Mr. Tucker instructed me to join them and informed us that we were in lockdown mode. At first I assumed it was a drill, but my classmates' trembling faces and shaking heads said otherwise. As we waited in eerie silence, Mr. Tucker refused to answer our questions about what was happening. Fear crept up my spine as my mind raced with the possibilities of what could be going on outside. 40 agonizing minutes passed before the lockdown was lifted, and we were allowed to go home. Everyone was anxious to know the reason behind the lockdown. Soon enough, the rumours began to circulate. A suspicious man had broken into the school, and the authorities had been called. My heart pounded as I heard the details. The intruder was spotted just moments after entering the building, and he fled when questioned by a teacher. The school was put into lockdown, and the police were notified. The man was eventually found hiding in the bathroom, the same one I had been in just before the lockdown. I shuddered as I realised how close I'd come to encountering the intruder. If not for my headphones, I would have been aware of the chaos unfolding around me. The thought of what could have happened if I had stayed a moment longer in that bathroom made my blood run cold. I couldn't help but wonder how long he'd been lurking there, waiting for his chance to strike. As a former high school math teacher, I can attest to the fact that there are some truly bizarre and terrifying experiences that can happen within the walls of a school. One such experience happened to me a couple of years ago, and it's something that still haunts me to this day. It was just another typical day at the school where I taught, with classes running from 7:50 a.m. to 2:40 p.m. However, on this particular day, things took a sinister turn. After the final bell rang and all the students had left for the day, I stayed behind to grade assignments and prepare for the next day's classes, as I often did. But little did I know that I was not alone in the building. Suddenly, the school's intercom crackled to life, and a robotic voice announced that the school was going into lockdown. This was not a drill. As I frantically locked the door to my classroom and turned off the lights, I couldn't help but wonder what was happening. Had there been some kind of threat to the school? Were my students and colleagues in danger? As I sat there in the dark, the minutes ticked by, and the silence was deafening. But then I heard a noise. At first it was just a faint sound, but it gradually grew louder and more distinct. It sounded like someone was moving around in my classroom. With my heart pounding in my chest, I tried to stay calm and assess the situation. That's when I saw it. A shoe poking out from one of my cabinets, and the door slightly ajar. There was someone in my classroom with me. Adrenaline coursed through my veins as I cautiously approached the cabinet, not knowing what I would find inside. But as I got closer, I saw movement. Someone was hiding inside, trying to stay out of sight. I quickly texted a friend and colleague who was still in the building, telling him what was happening and asking for help. He offered to meet me in his classroom, and I made a break for it. Walking down the dark, deserted hallway felt like a scene out of a horror movie, and every creak and sound made me jump. When I finally made it to my friend's classroom, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. We quickly called the authorities, and it wasn't long before they arrived and apprehended the intruder. As it turned out, he was a drug addict who had broken into the school and was hiding out in my classroom. It was a terrifying experience and one that I'll never forget, but I'm just glad that I made it out unscathed and that my quick thinking helped bring the situation to a peaceful resolution. It was a crisp, chilly morning when I set off for school. The sun had not yet risen, and the streets were eerily quiet. As I made my way down the familiar route, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was then that I noticed a shadowy figure walking behind me. I turned around, but the person's face was shrouded in darkness, and all I could see were his sunglasses glinting in the dim light. I quickened my pace, but the stranger continued to follow me, never uttering a word. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel my fear growing with every step. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I heard his footsteps drawing nearer. I broke into a run, sprinting towards my school as fast as I could. I dared not look back, but I could hear the stranger's ragged breathing just behind me. Finally, I reached the safety of my school gates and rushed inside, panting and out of breath. But the terror was far from over. Just a few hours later, our classroom was thrown into chaos when we were placed on lockdown. The doors were locked, the lights turned off, and we were ordered to remain silent. As we sat in the darkness, fear gripping our hearts, we heard the sound of footsteps outside our door. Every nerve in my body was on edge as I imagined the worst. Was it the same man who had followed me earlier? Was he coming to harm us? Finally, the lockdown ended we were told that it was safe to leave. But the relief was short-lived when my mother picked me up from school and told me the truth. The man who had followed me that morning had been caught lurking behind our school, and he had been arrested for trespassing. I was lucky to be alive. The man had lived in a house that I passed every day on my walk to school, and the thought of what could have happened still sends shivers down my spine. Hey, hold up before we dive into the next thrilling story. If you're loving what you're seeing and can't wait for more, then hit that subscribe button and join the thrills on my channel. Let's keep the chills going together. During my senior year of high school, I landed the coveted position of teacher's assistant for my all-time favourite gym teacher, Mrs. Shaw. It was a dream come true for me, as I was always a sports enthusiast and loved being active. One day we were scheduled to play kickball, and Mrs. Shaw asked me to fetch some large mats from the storage closet, which was located in an abandoned hallway outside the gym. As I entered the dimly lit storage closet, I suddenly caught a glimpse of a tall, creepy guy lurking behind a large box. He had long, stringy hair and a baggy shirt that hung off his bony frame. I immediately sensed that something was off, and without warning, I ran out of the room, slamming the door behind me. For a moment, I was too scared to move, but I knew I couldn't just stand there. So I hid in another storage room nearby, praying that the creepy guy wouldn't find me. As I huddled in the dark, I heard footsteps growing louder and louder, until they stopped right outside my door. I held my breath and waited, my heart pounding in my chest. Suddenly, I heard a loud banging on the door. I knew that the guy had found me. Terrified, I fumbled for my phone, hoping to call for help. But the signal was dead. I was trapped and completely alone. As I sat in that cold, dark room, I couldn't help but think about all the terrible things that could happen to me. Was the guy gonna hurt me? Was he gonna kidnap me? I was completely helpless, and it felt like I was never gonna make it out alive. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, an announcement came over the intercom, warning us that there was a lockdown in effect. I knew that meant that the creepy guy was still out there somewhere, and I was in even greater danger than before. Hours went by, and I sat in that room, paralyzed with fear. But finally, I heard a knock on the door. It was the police, and they'd come to rescue me. They led me back to the gym, where my classmates were all huddled together, waiting for the danger to pass. Looking back, I can't believe how close I came to losing my life that day. But I'm grateful to be alive, and I'll never forget the terror I felt as I hid in that storage room, waiting for someone to come to my rescue. Buckle up, because there's a bone-chilling truth that's even more harrowing than the tales you just heard. Imagine a life without our captivating videos and the spine-tingling thrill that comes with each one. Don't let that become your reality. Keep watching and let the chills continue.